and it is case sensitive. Yes, sir?
Is it okay if multiple people have the same password?
Yes, it's okay if multiple people have the same password. So now we've talked it through,
Yes.
and most of us would go off and build it. We'd say iteration planning done. I know enough. You know enough to build this and test it? Anybody?
No.
Nobody? It's not too much of a trick question, because you could. We could go off and build this, and we could test this, and maybe we don't have any misunderstandings. But what I'd like to do is, if in light of what we're here to talk about, specification by example and ATDD, is get some examples. So how about you give me some examples for these things? What are some example passwords that we can try?
Password 1, 2, 3.
Okay. What's another one?
One word is
What else?
Why?
You need
Well,
a number?
that first one, that second one would fail, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
Okay,
I
you're
don't
check-
think we need good examples and bad examples, don't
Okay,
we?
capital A, B, C, D, one.
Okay. A, B, C, D.
cat.
Cat.
Anything over 40.
Anything over 20. BRI gives me a hard time while I'm presenting.
This is exactly anything less than 4.
How about blank?
Okay, we got a less than 4.
Special character.
And I have how about a blank?
You want exactly 20.
Or with a blank? What did you mean? In it or blank?
Could be white space or just nothing at all.
Okay, so some white spaces. No.
4.
20 characters long.
Hmm?
Letter, number, just have 20 characters.
Exactly
For,
20?
For 1 over 1.
Yeah. So
Yeah, just missed it.
20.
Yeah, how about some characters that render differently when when they're parsed by a web server? So, you know, something that might, yeah, like a space turns into %20 and all your nice HTML encode.
SEC.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
SQL injection.
Funny. Right. Okay. So, another good example, and I don't really know how to write it, but I know what you mean. Okay. Is this sufficient? Do I have an example of every bad rule, of every rule failing?
No.
No.
What am I missing?
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You don't have a special character.
Like an
So those are
Spaces.
spaces, but it's say 1, 2, colon, 3, 4.
No, we need 1, 2, colon, 3, 4A, because that fills 2 things.
Thank you.
There we go.
Let's keep going with that line of thought. Do I have an example that fails for one and only one reason for each of these rules?
No.
What am I missing?
Letters.
Bernie.
Yeah, you've got the no special characters, and there is one that has a special character.
This one doesn't have a letter. This one doesn't have a number. This one has a special character. This one is too short.
But
This one's too long.
but cat also doesn't have a number, so
Yeah.
change one of its digits to characters to a digit.
Okay.
CA9.
C1T. And that's potentially confusing, so I'll make it 2.
And the long one
Uh-huh.
just have a number in it, right?
Yeah. Okay, so this one is too long, and I have a boundary condition, which is kind of interesting.
Something.
I guess for dissing the boundary, we need one
We need one that's 19.
Yeah, okay, so maybe I'll make this one be 21 characters, and I'll cut it off right there. Okay?
Is age associated with the password?
Is what?
The age of the password part of this?
Nope. Not in this story. In another one.
Right now, we're only checking for one special character.
Yep.
So unless you use a regular expression or something like that, you're going to get @ signs and double quotes and all those punctuation.
Okay. Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
why you need to
So
use all the
now-
numbers?
That one, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but maybe that's one I want to test in unit tests. And I'll come back to why later. I'm sure I'll hit it before the end of the talk. Okay, do I have an example, a good example, an example of every rule of a password failing for only one rule? Okay, so then what we want to do, the next step, and I'll use my brown, is distill. I'm going to draw a little table here. So what I want to do now is I want to delete stuff that's not absolutely necessary. I want to get down to the bare minimum. So all this other stuff, I want to get rid of because I want to treat these as a specification, as a living document, as a way to eliminate misunderstanding, to have a reference or a specification for the system. And I want to be able to look at this and quickly know what the rules are. If I have all of this stuff, I can't see the rules I can't understand the forest for the trees. I got too much stuff. So I want to boil it down to the bare minimum. And what I may want to do is I could...
Are we left with any that actually pass?
Yeah, you need ABC4.
ABC4. Thank you very much.
Just be nice to have one of them.
I thought
Yeah,
I
you
had
crossed out-
asked you guys and you weren't giving it to me.
Password 1, 2, 3 pass, but you
Yeah,
crossed
we
it out.
scratched that off, yes.
Which one does?
Password 1, 2, 3.
would pass.
It would have, yep, it would have. I could have left that one in, sure.
They wouldn't test the boundary limit of 4 though.
Yes, ma'am.
No, never mind.
Okay, so I want to get down to the bare minimum, and if this is going to be a living document, maybe it should be on a wiki, or maybe it should be in a PDF, or maybe it should be somewhere where people can see it and point to and talk about it. New people come and join my team, I can show them, hey, here's a good place to get started, and it explains our system. And then as we are talking to the product owners, and we want to extend some part of the system that we worked on 2 years ago, we can come back to the spec. Here's how this aspect of the system works. Here are some new examples that I want to add in, or a new piece of the specification I want to add in, and it kind of goes in this space, so we can see how we specified the system beforehand. And I don't want to wade through too much stuff. I want it to be a minimum so I can look at it and grok it really quickly. And catch up with my notes. So some of you testers may be, this may be familiar terminology, to have one example per equivalence class, or maybe, so I see some heads nodding, or maybe an example around all of the boundary conditions. Whatever makes sense, but I want it to be bare minimum. I don't want a whole bunch of extra stuff in there. Another reason why I want it to be minimum is because if I decide to automate this stuff, and I'm going to automate it from kind of high up, and I'm going to go end to end, I'm going to go through the database, these things may run kind of slow. And it's really easy to double or triple the length of the time this thing's going to run just by adding in needless examples. So it makes it hard to communicate, hard to understand, and slow to run if I were to automate it. So that's why we want to get it down to the minimum. As we're doing this, as we're discussing, and as we're distilling it, we want to think about a ubiquitous language. We want to think about the domain. We want to think about the terms that the customers use. And we want to use those. We want to use those in our examples. We want to use those in our code, in our data model, in our conversations. That's to, I mean, we wouldn't want to use programmer jargon when we're talking to customers. We want to use the language of the business. And these are concepts that come from Eric Evans' Domain-Driven Design book. Anybody have that, read it, know about it? It's a great, new sellers, thank you very much, and you would have. Great book, great topic. Even if you're not a programmer, part 1 talks a lot about the business and the technology people using, did I make you mad, Alex?
No, that's it.
Okay, feel free, and as Alex in his example, is to go get more pizza at any time. I won't stop next time. Okay, so yeah, great book. Part 1 talks about using the language of the business, getting the business and the programmers on the same page. Great thing to do, a great book to get and to pass around with your team. So that's something else to watch out for, is that you're using the language of the business in your stories and in your examples. One of the other things we don't want to do as we're doing this, I'll come right back to you, is we're not trying to create scripts. Scripts have the same kind of problem as having too many examples. I can't understand what the requirement is when I'm looking at a test script, because there's all these steps. There's the steps to get it set up, the steps to execute something, and then maybe some things to verify what you're looking for. And so we're not after test scripts here. We're after just a few examples that's easy to look at and quickly understand. Yes, sir?
I think I might be getting ahead of myself, because you might be leading into that when you're talking about a table format or if statements or what's it called, working?
Yeah. Getting a little bit ahead of me. So the question was that I'm kind of alluding to maybe some tables, or maybe there's a specific format that we need to put these things in. And he mentioned Gherkin, which is a pretty cool format. Gherkin is given, when, then, and I will talk a little bit more about that as we go. But not too much right just yet. One other thing that I think would be good to say at this point is that, coming back to test scripts talk about how you do something and how you're going to verify it. And the how you do something in your application tends to change more than the business rule itself. The underlying business rule is a little bit more stable. Think about Microsoft Word and how they changed the ribbon and over the years. But how you bold text, the fact that you can bold text is still there. It's always been there. And so many other applications have the same kind of thing. So I don't want to get lost in all the details. I want to be able to grok it pretty quickly. Oh, look, Gherkin, and given when then on my next note card. These passwords, a lot of the things the examples that you may come up with may fit into a table really well. And if it fits into a table, great. Fit it into a table. Sometimes it doesn't feel right to put it in a table. It might be more interesting to say, and I need some more room, so I think, and that one's kind of dim. Maybe I will, right here. So maybe something like Free Popcorn Tuesday. So given it's Tuesday, when I purchase